Hi there, Dr. Carlos Todd here, and what are we talking about today? Talking about how to fight less and how to love more. The topic today is flooding, when the brain goes offline, right? And my focus is really on helping people how to have less conflict, better conflict in their relationships, in the workplace, and how to manage anger. That's really where these videos are focused on over time. So the topic is how do we manage when the brain goes offline, and that key word here is flooding. Conceptually, there's a number, right? And once your heart rate climbs past it during a conflict, the conversation you've been having over time becomes much more convoluted, right? You keep pressing, you keep pushing, but part of this is this push or this drive is happening because of something that is going on in your brain that we're going to talk about today. Again, my name is Dr. Carlos Todd. I am a licensed clinical mental health counselor. I've been working with clients since 2000. I saw my first client in the year 2000. And over the years, I've learned a few things. I've worked with individuals and couples dealing with anger and conflict. And today, as our focus, I want to kind of talk about that flood of chemicals that occur, stress in the conflict. And why is this important? It's important because something is going on inside of you that no matter how much you change your communication styles, you change your conflict resolution strategies. If you don't understand this one thing, I think you're going to struggle. So today we're going to talk about that tipping point, right? The moment that flooding crosses that threshold in your brain, and that it takes your brain offline, right? Researchers give it a name. And once you learn and understand this name, and once you understand what it does, you're going to be in a much better place, I think, to handle some of the disagreements that come along in your relationship, and even in some ways in the workplace. The researcher John Gottman spent decades in the lab learning and understanding how couples operate in conflict. And one of the things that he did was put monitors on the hearts of, monitors to monitor the heart rate of people who were in conflict, right? And one of the things that he learned is that when people's heart rate climbed past roughly 100 beats per minute. And one of the things I've seen is that depending on your resting heart rate, that could be a little bit higher or it could be a little bit lower. But generally speaking, once a couple or person reaches above that 100 beats per minute, for some people, that's where the trouble starts, right? Even at 90 some beats per minute, and for some who have lower resting heart rates, 80 some beats per minute, they can find themselves in trouble, right? And Gottman calls this DPA, or diffuse physiological arousal, right? The rest of us, we just call it flooding. And understanding this flooded state, I think, is important. In this state, measurable things happen, right? Access to this part of the brain right here, the prefrontal cortex, it drops, right? Your ability to take in new information drops. Empathy, your capacity to imagine understand the other person's inner world, it drops. Creative problem solving drops. All the things that you need, right? Even your hearing narrows towards threatening things that the other person is saying. So you see what I mean? This state that is called flooding, it changes you, right? So no amount of learning communication skills or conflict resolution skills, like the words you say alone, is going to help unless you begin to understand when this state is happening and how to manage it so that you can actually use these communication and conflict resolution skills, right? You literally become, for a few minutes, a less capable human being. Not because you're a bad person, but because your physiology has shifted away from the skills you most need in a conflict towards just pure survival, right? Just fighting through the disagreements. In this state, people tend to want to keep talking, but keeping the conversation going can backfire, right? Now you see why it's a bad idea to keep pushing, keep talking. For both people are flooded. Both are past that threshold point. You're asking two people whose brains are underwater, is not performing well, is not doing well, to work towards fixing or solving that money problem, that parenting problem, that problem around sex, that problem around, scheduling. You're asking them to solve this problem at a point in time when you just don't have the resources, the psychological resources to do it. Every extra minute of a flooded conversation doesn't move towards resolution. It moves towards damage, right? People say that thing. They say that thing that sometimes you're going to remember for years. Because flooded people do and say things that can be very, very, very hurtful. The couples who do well are not the ones who power through. They're the ones who recognize that they're flooded and they stop. They precisely go from pushing through to stopping, right? Getting themselves together and coming back. So, how does this play out in a relationship? Let me show you what it looks like, because it's often misread as something that it isn't. Picture a husband who, mid argument, goes quiet, stops responding, looks away. His wife experiences this as stonewalling, as him coldly shutting her out, not caring, pushing her, punishing her with his silence. The wife has a real difficulty reading him, right? And that read that she may have on him, thinking he doesn't care, is oftentimes wrong, right? Because there's something else going on. What is actually happening is that he's flooded. And here's the real research finding on this, right? Men on average tend to flood faster and stay flooded longer than women. They find that they find that physical sensation just more unpleasant, right? So it's harder to deal with. So he's not stonewalling to hurt her. He's overwhelmed. His systems are maxed out and he's shutting down in his body, put the brakes on, right? But she can't see his heart rate. She can only see the wall. And so when that does not feel natural for her, right? It feels threatening. She pushes harder to get a response, which floods him even further. And we know how this goes, right? It goes into what we call the distancer pursuer or the distancer withdrawer dynamic. And that it can become a real problem. This can also happen at work, right? The same threshold exists in the conference room. We're just less used to naming it or calling it that, right? Think of it as a heated negotiation or a feedback conversation that goes sideways. Past that line, nobody in the room is being reasonable. Not because they're unprofessional, but because their biology won't allow it. You've watched two smart people in meetings stop solving the problem and just start trying to win. That's the flood. The topic becomes a threat. And this threat causes the collaborative brain, the brain that's going to solve problems and work on that important business idea, it just goes offline. Good leaders learn to read the room and read their own physiological arousal, and they know when to stop, right? When they see this cross the line, they see voices are up, faces are flush, people repeatedly getting louder, they know that continuing the conversation is pointless, and they call a timeout. They take a break. Not because they're avoiding the issue, but because they know that the issue is not going to be solved in this flooded state. What is the mistake that folks make here? They make the mistake of treating a flooded person and including themselves as if they're being difficult on purpose. When you interpret flooding as a choice, you get angry because now it's personal, right? Your temperature raises and the flooding continues. The reframing here is everything. That person isn't giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time. And their brain is underwater, right? It is underperforming. This does not mean that person somehow is not responsible for their actions. What it does mean, however, is that even though the person is responsible for their actions, you don't continue to push or persist. You pull back, right? You work towards responding differently. So I always want to give you tools. I always want to kind of give you a way to handle this stuff. So here are the tools. The tool is a timeout. Not done, but done in a specific way, right? Because a bad timeout, it's just as bad as no timeout at all. What are the 3 rules? 1, name it without blame. Not you're impossible, I'm done. That's abandonment. Instead, just say I'm flooded, right? And by the way, making sure that you beforehand talk about this concept so that when it happens in a disagreement, you're okay, you can kind of push through, you do what you need to do to make the situation, you know that when the situation comes up again and you use the word flooding, you know what it means, right? So you understand that the other person, both of you are responsible for being in that flooded state, right? And you know that it's time to pull back. So the first one is to name it. Hey, I'm flooded. I can feel it. I need to take a break. what is the second part, right? The second part is a promise that you're going to return, a promise that you're going to come back, and you want to give a specific time. I need an hour, I need 20 minutes. I just need to kind of get myself together. Let's pick this conversation back up in the morning. It's, or later in the day. Is now 1 a.m, and this happens a lot with couples, right? They're trying to talk that conversation to death, and it's 2 a.m, it's 1 a.m. It's not a good time, right? So the first, again, is to name without blame. The second one is to give a promise to return and give a return on a specific time. And the third one is to let the other person know that what you're doing, right? Don't skip the 20 minutes, right? If you say you're going to be back in 20 minutes, be back in 20 minutes, right? And when you do take that time, you don't want to sit and relitigate the conflict in your head. I don't understand why he said that to me, or she said this to me. I don't get it, right? And you're going over and over and over in your head. Guess what? That's going to keep the flooding up. That does not help anybody, right? And so the goal here is that when you take a break, go do something else, go watch a show, scroll through one of your social medias, right? Do something fun, do something distracting. And I also tell people just to kind of remind yourself, we'll get through this, we'll find a way, or there's a way, so that it helps you kind of distract a little bit. Here's the truth, right? The harder truth is that the timeouts require trust. And if trust isn't already there, it's going to be a problem. So you want to build trust over time by making sure that you do what you say you're going to do. If you say you need space, take the space, and then you come back, right? That's come back to the conversation with a different mindset. So let's recap. What did we talk about in this video? So roughly past 100 beats per minute, you're flooded. Diffuse physiological arousal, empathy, reason, impulse control is all offline, right? You keep talking it out, or trying to keep talking it out is just going to backfire on you. So you don't want to talk it out or keep talking in that flooded state, right? So that's the goal, and I'll give you some tips to consider. The next thing here, next episode, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the chemistry around conflict. And keep in mind, any of my book, Fight Plan, as well as some of the other books listed below, and our courses, we cover these topics and more around anger and conflict. That is our focus: anger and conflict, anger and conflict. And my goal, as always, is to fight less, to help you fight less, love more. Hit that subscribe button. It helps us a lot to kind of push this channel. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.